And hello everyone, welcome to the Mole Hole. I'm your host Chriz, aka the Mole, and for the year of Trek on Xbound, I'm here to do the animated series with, of course, Marco Shadow
Hello.
and James Phoenix.
Hello.
And yeah, we're here to discuss Star Trek, the animated series as a whole. The most, in my opinion, underrated Star Trek series ever.
I can agree with that.
Mainly because, like I mentioned before we did this, there's so many people who call themselves Trekkies and I just never watched it because animated, but it's not written like a kid show. In fact, some of the scripts were from the planned season 4 they were going to give to the original series.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't think there are a lot of Trekkies that say that because Trekkies is considered a derogative term. They would be called Trekkers.
Yeah, and I'm using it in a derogatory way because they're being pricks by saying, "Oh, it's a cartoon."
Fair enough.
So I was using it correctly.
All right then.
Yes, but yeah, like I said, this was made by the people who did the He-Man cartoon. Everyone remembers the original He-Man and his
Blue
purple
Charmer.
pants. But
I have the power.
yep,
Pretty much.
which yeah, like I said, this was written to be like the 4th and technically 5th, but more like a 4th season for the original people. It made complete sense. It fits the continuity and stuff, and and I'm glad it's canon again.
Is it canon?
Yeah.
It is. It's officially remade canon. They went for a whole thing with that, where at one point people didn't want it to be considered canon, but yet the writers of all the other Star Trek stuff loved it so much that they took stuff from it and included it in later series and stuff anyway. So eventually, nowadays, like a few years back, they went, fuck it, it's canon.
Nice.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that each episode was written by a different person. And that was its greatest strength, but also its greatest weakness, because you could tell each episode was written by a different person.
You are aware that that's how TV shows work, right? All of them.
Yeah.
Not really.
That's how
Yes,
a lot
really.
of Star Trek series do it, where they have like loads of episodes written by different people. Because what they did with this one as well, some of those episodes, the ones writing it, are famous sci-fi people or ones who wrote episodes for the other series,
Yes.
and this is them doing their follow-up episodes. Because the original series also had multiple people doing it.
Which is fine. I don't know, it was weird that every episode was literally a different person, so each person only wrote one episode, whereas in, like, Star Trek in the TV series, you usually have maybe, like, 4 different writers, and so it'll switch off, and so you'll see, this episode written by this person, this episode written by that person, but then it'll come back around, so it's like you're seeing the same writers over and over again, and it feels like everything is in continuity, is together, but because with this one, every episode was written by a different person. Yes, every episode felt Star Trek because obviously these writers know what they're doing when it comes to Star Trek. But to me, it didn't feel cohesive as a season because it was all different writers, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, but the thing is, like I said, a lot of shows are like that, because if you read a lot of these behind-the-scenes books and things about how the shows are made, particularly Star Trek, even in things like Next Gen and DS9, there's been a lot of instances. You have to realize, when those shows were still on the air, particularly around Next Gen, right after Season 3 when it started getting good, they literally, Paramount got inundated with submitted scripts that were just piling up in a room. Like,
Yeah.
they were telling people, just stop sending us scripts, we can't produce your scripts, like, we appreciate it, but we don't have time to read all these. And but sometimes, if they found one that seemed particularly good, they would make that episode. It's happened on a number of occasions that you can read about where submitted scripts made an episode, so there's a lot of times where the episodes were a one-off thing that somebody wrote, that became a cool thing. Or if somebody that was on the crew or the cast knows somebody that was a good writer, then, hey, maybe you want to write this episode, or if a writer on the show knew somebody that might have it write it, or sometimes one of the cast members themselves will write the episode.
Yeah, and it still feels coherent and stuff because basically they still had a team together to then help retool each episode anyway. So someone may have wrote it, but the same people were still working on every episode.
Right, and that's how it goes, is you get a basic script and then you make tweaks to it and alter it as needed to make it fit the show. That was how it worked.
Yeah, because I could watch this series, and if you told me it was just the same person writing each episode, I'd be like, okay, cool. I can understand that. It feels the same. The script only feels slightly different for what the purposes of the story is. It doesn't change anything. That's cool.
Yeah.
But if you told me each one was written by someone else, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. You know what I mean? It's like it felt like a whole. It felt, like I said, it felt like the next series, which was good. And we got all the cast back who should have been there.
Except one.
Yeah, except Walter, what's going to be my thing playing is, I understand he was probably busy doing other stuff. Fair enough, he had his reasons for not doing it, but I'm like, Chekhov should have been there. And to
So
me,
glad you said that.
What?
So glad you said that, because I knew you and Jim were going to say that despite listing off all your Star Trek facts and stuff. Ensign Pavel Chekhov transferred to a new assignment during the final year of the USS Enterprise historic 5-year mission. Replaced by his own navigation instruction at the Starfleet Academy, Lieutenant Arax, by Stardate, and it mentions the dates and stuff, Chekhov also received promotion to the rank of lieutenant and had rejoined the Enterprise's crew. Then, under the command of Captain William Decker, and it keeps going through, and it says he's not reunited until the Khan incident.
This is true. He wasn't in the first one.
Which means you guys' complaint, you big trekkers, is it matched continuity, and you didn't want it to match continuity, despite the fact you keep listing off all the facts about continuity and timelines. Huh.
Well, I didn't know he had transferred out at the end of the series. At the end of the original series.
Which means, boom, everyone was there.
Fair enough. I don't know, it just to me felt weird him not being there and he wrote one of the scripts. I'm like, really?
He wasn't in the original, he wasn't in the motion picture either.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, that's why, because it was his character depth and growth and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And just to make a point to you, Marcus, just looking at this real quick, the first season of the original Kirk Star Trek, of the 29 episodes, there were a minimum of 22 writers, not counting Roddenberry himself, that edited several episodes.
Fair enough.
So, yeah.
Fair enough. I felt this season was too short. Or the series was too short. Like, the end of it was very abrupt. And
that's because it got canceled, buddy.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm aware that's probably because it did just get canceled in the middle of it, but I'm just like, oh, that didn't feel like a finale. I'm like, oh, I wanted more.
To be fair, Jim, it didn't get cancelled.
Oh, it didn't?
They mentioned they wrote this to be the continuing adventures. Then they ended it there because the cast was now filming the motion picture. Their adventures were continuing. Or they were planning out the motion picture. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Which, if that's the case, then that disappoints me a little bit more. Because I'm like, well, if you were planning to cancel the series, to stop the series there, it's like, I wish the finale felt more like a finale, because it felt really abrupt.
No.
It didn't feel like a finale to me.
They weren't planning to just end it the second they got the films. Like you guys kept even listing during all those Star Trek films when we reviewed them. They didn't know they were getting a film. They didn't know they were getting the next one. Then they're told we're working on the film, so all the Star Trek writers have to go there, and the casts have to go write and do this. What were they going to continue it with new voice actors and completely new writers that had nothing to do with the original series? That wouldn't work.
No, what I'm saying is if they had planned to...
yeah, I'm saying they didn't plan.
So it was effectively like it got canceled. It was just they just abruptly stopped there because everyone left.
No, but being cancelled means that the studios and stuff are like, boo, we don't like this show. This is the fact they decided to end it so they could do the films.
I don't know why. I don't see why a film meant they had to stop making the TV show though.
Because the film is now a continuation of their adventures.
I would say if they had decided to end it, and they decided to end it like after they had done that last episode, I say they should have done one more episode, which wouldn't have killed them, just to wrap everything up and actually make it feel like the end of a series. In my opinion, unless there was a situation where they had no choice and everybody just fucking left, or series got canceled, there's no excuse to just abruptly end the series and make it not feel at least something like an ending. Like, as much grief as I give All Good Things and Next Generation for being a series finale, that at least somewhat felt like a series finale. I didn't particularly like it as a series finale, but I could look at it and say, yeah, that's a series finale. Whereas with the animated series, it just abruptly ended like they just rage quit the animated series or something.
Except for, like I said, it was meant to be continuing the adventures of the original series. Therefore, if they're going to continue the original series people anyway at a certain point, but in now live action, the series has done what it needed to. It was only that series. It wasn't written to be exactly like a Star Trek series. It was written just to tie fans over, so they had a continuing adventures.
Right.
Like, that first episode doesn't feel like a brand new series beginning either.
It's not. It's continuing the same mission where the show left off.
Yeah, but how many shows can do that? Which means it's more of a continuation of the original, which means the original series already had an ending anyway. So it's like, it's more like when you get like the accompanishing books or like spin-off series and stuff.
Well, aside from the fact that the animated series was actually good, it's kind of like that shitty final season of Scrubs.
Sort of, although that one was actually called Scrubs Series 9, and that was actually meant to be a spin-off, but was actually changed to be part of the series.
Stupid.
But yes, like I said, the animated series, like I said, I really do like this series. Or I will mention, I did find one little tidbit when I was watching my DVDs, and it is listed in the commentaries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Something that there was an inconsistency, which I'm surprised you guys never pointed out.
Okay.
A load of the costumes changed colours. Like Klingons are wearing bright pink.
Never noticed that.
Neither did I.
And this is the fun fact. The director, Hal Sutherland, I hope I'm pronouncing that one right.
Yes.
I think it's Sutherland, yeah, but Hal Sutherland, the person they put in charge of the final designs, they didn't realise was colourblind.
Oops.
So to him, pink was grey. And thus, they had that inconsistency.
Oopsie.
Wait, Hal Sutherland is colorblind? Wow, that explains a lot from the 80s.
Yep, he's colorblind.
Okay, all those coloring mistakes that you see in the old 80s cartoons, now it makes sense.
But, well, not really, because there'd be more inconsistencies. This was more, they were constantly pink because he was grey. Which is somehow better. But
Which that does lead me to question, though. I'm assuming he wasn't doing all the coloring himself, so how did one of the colorists not go, hey, you're making these dudes bright pink?
because, yeah, like I said, it was the director. So when he was like, yeah, okay, and then he was putting the stuff together and all that, and they decided, okay, and they listened to him and stuff with his final stuff because he was the director. It just got through, basically. It just happened to go through. It's one of those things where sometimes little errors like that happen.
Okay, then.
I mean, like I said, it's funny in hindsight, but it was also not noticeable enough that you guys picked up on it, which means, yeah, it did its job. People were like, it's an S, and you can always pass it off as, well, it's an animated series, so they're gonna make some sort of changes in colors and designs to match the universe.
Yep.
There's also loads of episodes of this series, which I do like, which are continuations of previous episodes.
Indeed.
Like that More Tribbles episode.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my favourite episode of Yesteryear.
Which, Jim, I do have to say, if the animated series is now in continuity, does that not fuck up STO?
No, because STO is not in continuity.
Yeah, STO.
But it took all the continuity. They took all the continuity into consideration when they crafted the story and events that had led up to it.
To some extent or another, yes, but at the same time, the thing is, if it's not in a TV show or whatever, it's not considered canon in Star Trek. Star Trek made that decision long ago that they said, all right, you know what, there's going to be a lot of different versions of this property. TV shows and movies are canon. Everything else, you guys do what you want. It's not canon, but enjoy it. And so, you know, video games like STO went off and did their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
The novel verse, all the book authors who seem to have gotten together and decided, hey, we're going to make all the books one continuous universe that are their own thing, and they went and did that, except for Shatner because he has to be Shatner. You know, everybody, you know, the comics are another continuity altogether where they met the X-Men and Doctor Who and shit. You know, there's all kinds of different continuities within Star Trek because they made the decision not to try to keep it all one continuity, like, for example, Star Wars did for many, many years, deciding they would make sure that everything was canon.
Right, but even still, with Star Trek, even though they have different things in different continuities, the one thing, from what I've seen, that the Star Trek fandom and Star Trek people have always tried to do is keep continuity up to the point where it splits. So everything that's come before is all canon continuity, and then it's like they choose one point and they say, okay, from here up, it's no longer continuity.
Yeah, but
It's
I would make the case, what from the animated series actually goes against STO?
Tribbles.
Yeah, they changed their design for an animated thing, but then...
No, not the design, how they work. Because the animated series, McCoy fixed the Tribbles with Perry Mudd's help. They no longer replicate. In the game, they're standard Tribbles. They fucking replicate like bunnies.
Yeah, but in the game, they also moved stuff around, so it feels like a game, not so it's accurate.
Wait a minute, is that also why the Tribbles were bright fucking pink?
Now we're learning.
Because that I noticed.
And actually, well, I think
he also helped do the Boo saga of Dragon Ball.
No,
I'm kidding.
But yeah, in SEO, from what I understand, they started fixing a lot of that because a lot of Trekkers have had that complaint of, you do realize your galaxy's fucked up, right? And they said, okay, yes, you're right, our galaxy's fucked up, we'll fix that. So they've started moving things back around to make it more the actual galaxy map from, you know, Starfleet, from Star Trek.
Well, yeah, because they built it as best they could with the game engines they had at the time, and as best they could based on what they culled from the show about where things were in the galaxy. But in the intervening, how long has that game's been around? Like 6 years now, 7 years. In the intervening time, people have gone through and they've released books of Star Trek, Star Charts, and other things, where people working with the show have actually gone through and compiled the accurate star charts of the galaxy in the Star Trek universe, so they had a reference tool they could go back and actually look at and say, oh, this is what it's supposed to be. Well, let's make it that, since that's what the people that are controlling the canon say it's supposed to be.
Yep.
Which is cool. But back to your point.
It's also
why, sorry, go ahead, Mo.
It's also why, when they, because like I said, they made it canon and stuff. It's also why, like I said, my favorite episode of this was Yesteryear, which I believe was either the second or the first episode of the series.
Yes, Yesteryear, I believe, based on what I saw of the production numbers, I think it was filmed first but aired second.
Yeah, that'll be the one that they aired it second, I think. Yeah, I think they aired it. But I think they aired it second everywhere. Or they aired it second in Los Angeles, one of the two. Because I remember 1 and 2 got swapped around in LA for when the guy who plays Sulu, when he was basically
George Takei.
Yeah, when he was running one of the elections, because otherwise the TV network has to give equal amount of time to all candidacies.
Right.
And which I also love the text commentary says, he still lost by a landslide. I'm like, oh, why would you put this? But with that episode Yesteryear, since you've now seen it, Jim, did you notice dialogue and some of the stuff with Spock?
Some of it. What about it?
They included it in the 2009 Star Trek remake film.
Oh.
Yeah, for young Spock.
But I don't recall his cousin showing up to save him, though.
No, but remember the timelines were changing and stuff, but they still included some of the dialogue and him being bullied and how he was being bullied and stuff.
That is true.
which was from that episode. Which cool little fact.
But they didn't put in his adorable pet thing.
Because I don't think that would work for the film.
Damn.
Because the pet thing died?
Yes, there's a parallel timeline. It didn't necessarily die here.
And also, when you're about the pet thing, Marcus, we're on about at the point where the pet thing would have been alive when he was the kid. It was that they showed that in the film, which
This is true.
that's kind of cool. But yeah, like I said, the game will have inconsistencies, but to be fair, it's an MMO.
Yeah.
I mean, is it really canon to Star Trek that there's going to be 1,000 people running around as Superman?
Yeah, not particularly.
And who remembers that great Star Trek captain of suckmycock_XXX298? Oh, he's legendary. I put him right up there with Kirk and Picard. I'm like, it's an MMO. It doesn't have to be continuity-wise. It just has to be a good game and have most things right. Plus, to be fair, most Star Trek fans, like I'd mentioned at the top of the thing, like, for example, I know you, Jim, shout out to Tachi and various other ones, just never watched the show.
True.
Which means you wouldn't have picked up on that.
True.
Because a load of the older fans, a load of the younger fans, or older, depending on how you want to go, the ones that weren't original series fans, never actually gave the animated series a try.
True. Well, I didn't even know it existed when it was actually airing. I didn't hear about it until after the fact, and I was like, well, fuck.
Yeah. Like fun for everyone watching. The Practical Joker episode, and I had to write down the episode name, but the Practical Joker episode.
That was weird.
Oh, the original series. They invented the holodeck. Thank you, Next Gen fanboys. You're welcome. Yeah, I can almost taste their salty tears.
Nice. But yeah, Marcus, just to elaborate what you were saying earlier, what was wrong with the tribbles?
He explained, he said they fixed it, but in the game they're not fixed.
What do you mean
Yeah,
fixed?
because remember in the episode, Harry Mudd supposedly found a way to keep them from replicating, but instead turned them into mass colonies, and then McCoy fixed them so that they were in fact never able to replicate again and could actually be pets. Yet in the game they're standard tribbles and they can replicate colonies. Also, the other thing that episode establishes is the fact that Klingons have genetically engineered predators to the tribbles. So, yeah, by the point in time of the game, which would be like the 25th century, if those predators had been unleashed combined with McCoy's little serum that basically made them infertile, yeah, I'd be hard-pressed to say that the tribbles would even still exist.
Perhaps, but we saw that Predator was kind of ineffective because of what was happening with the colonies, and they played a trick on the Klingons. So, yeah, that Predator was kind of useless. And McCoy found a way to make that sterile, but they also didn't immediately share that with the Klingons, and the Klingons probably would have been too proud to fucking use that. They would have rather just kill all the tribbles. So it's entirely possible that never was that was never widespread.
Plus,
yeah, but by Star Trek 6, they would have shared it with the Klingons because fucking treaty.
But I also believe by the time Next Gen rolled around, I believe the Klingon, they mentioned it a couple of times, that when they did the peace, which we never really saw properly, the peace between the Klingons and the Federation, there was some sort of civil war. They could have killed off the Predators during war.
True.
Yeah, the Klingon... I would say the Klingons could use the tribbles as weapons against each other, but that would be dishonorable, so they probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But
even then, just the big thing I was thinking about, and it was kind of a half joke of, the tribbles wouldn't be able to replicate. We wouldn't have replicating tribbles in the 25th century.
Like I said, I feel like McCoy might have got that to some, but it's got to be impossible to do that to an entire species across space. There are going to be some tribbles that continue reproducing and are inevitably going to keep spreading like that. It's just going to inevitably happen. It's just how it is.
Yeah. But, yeah, like I said, that episode, the More Tribbles one, was a sequel to the Tribbles episode in the original series, just like Yesteryear was for... Oh, fuck. You know, Hang on, pull up my note. There it is. The Guardian of Forever.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have to remember that name, but yeah, the Guardian of Forever. And I was like, that's cool that they got to do sequel episodes.
Indeed.
That was an awesome episode too, yesteryear. I liked that episode.
Mm.
I did as well, with the whole thing of like Spock changing time and stuff, which
hopefully
he never does that again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speaking of which, Marcus, you're going to complain about, oh, that screws up the background of STO, when I can think of at least 3 distinct times in that game where we have either changed a timeline or gone back in time and fucked up history. Within the context of that game. So let's not go there. Hell,
That's why
the goddamn Kuvalmach went back in time, and that's why the Klingons had the ridges back.
Logically speaking, Jim, wouldn't that just fix the error?
I guess.
If you went back in time and you changed the timeline slightly, it's possible it has like the new spin-off, well, not the spin-off, the new movies do. It's possible the universe branched slightly and you made some inconsistencies of like the tribbles not being cured.
That is possible.
Because you guys fucked it up.
Yeah. I mean, that's the Kuvalmach, Tom Paris and Belana Torres' kid went back in time, and that's how they were able to use her DNA to cure the Klingon genetic mess up so they could get their ridges back and be honorable and shit.
Which, yeah, like I mentioned with the original series, the cast was back, woo.
Yes.
And it's voiced by the actual people. Obviously, they're voiced by the real people. For them, it's not just the characters back, which
that
instantly makes them awesome.
I agree. I got to say one other thing, though. One other thing. Regarding the voice acting, all the cast members from the original series that came back and voiced their characters, you know, Shatner, Nimoy, Doohan,
right.
You know, all the others. You know, they all come back. They did a great job. The rest of the characters, not so much. Particularly the random aliens of the week, because I'm sorry, but I get taken a little bit out of the show when it is painfully obvious by sound to me that at least a third of the aliens they meet on these random planets have the same voice as that Chekhov replacement officer on the bridge.
Mm-hmm. They do.
It's like, okay, you couldn't, you know, you couldn't throw $50 a pop to a couple of aspiring voice actors that needed to buy food for the week just to get something, really? Anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Not on that budget.
Evidently not.
Which, to be fair, it's still one of the most high-valued productions that company's done. Like, some of their other ones costs way more.
Fair enough.
You also have to realize, Jim, all of their budget went to the original voice cast.
Fair enough.
Also, am I the only one who thought it was a little bit weird hearing batshit insane, constantly laughing Majel Barrett? That was weird. Like, I'm not used to hearing Majel Barrett go batshit insane.
That was weird.
But yeah, like I said, I thought the voice acting of the original characters and stuff was fucking awesome.
It was. Now, counterpoint to your point, are you used to Majel Barrett going crazy horny and trying to fuck Spock?
Yes, because that's basically Loxana Troy.
No. Loxana was at least a little coy about the fact that she wanted to fuck Picard, and even to her it was after the first time she knew she was just playing around with him. Whereas, because of that weird fucking mind control, whatever that bullshit love potion, then he brought on board. Freaking, it's like, no, she was just all over him. Like, it was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But yeah, like I said, the voice acting and stuff on that was good. The script felt very Star Trek-y. Like, they didn't try to water it down for kids just because it was animated. Like, you could tell it was made for the fans, and I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, Like, oh fuck, I can't remember which episode it was, like, but that one where they're against that evil energy, the one that
Yeah.
takes over the ship and fires the weapons and stuff. When he traps on the world as they're going away, you even hear it scream out, "No, please, I'm gonna be alone." No, like, how many kids shows would do that if it was made as a kids animation?
True.
Which is
That's
also
true.
funny. Which is also funny because clearly wasn't made as a kids show. It was made for the older fans. Yet it's also worth noting it won the Emmy for best children's show.
Wow.
Because one of the Emmy, this was like, I figure this was the first Star Trek series to ever win an Emmy. They submitted it under the best children's thing, which is all cartoons could be submitted under at the time, and they won for best cartoon.
Nice.
Nice.
I will also say one thing that this show becoming canon now actually kind of fixes and makes better.
The fact you put your Klingon character in STO in a pink costume.
No, but that's cool too. But no, that means now officially in canon, in the actual Star Trek universe as opposed to the Abrams Trek universe, Spock still exists. He's still there. Should the Federation ever need him.
Huh?
Remember, he got cloned, so there's giant Spock living on some planet with some Roman dude.
Oh yeah.
So Spock technically is still alive, well, functioning, and as logical as always in the actual universe.
That does not fix anything.
It fixed not having Spock in the actual universe.
But the actor's dead, which means
I know.
you're never going to see Spock in that universe properly anyway. I would rather have the last one played by Leonard Nimoy be the last of Spock instead of grasping at straws. Oh, the clone that was somewhere else could still be Spock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, tying the Leonard Nimoy thing with him being Spock and him going through the time and doing the, as everyone likes to say, Abrams Trek, even though it's just called Star Trek, we can drop that shit. We're not 5. It's a case of they actually drew upon all of Star Trek for that series. That's right, like I mentioned, they even did the stuff from the animated series of young Spock being bullied, which that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can't try to grasp like that because it just makes it. And that would be like if, I remember Jason David Frank were to suddenly die of something, and everybody was like, "Well, it's okay. Tommy's still around. We can get Tom the clone from the past." Like, no, you're not going to do that. That would be stupid.
What I was saying is that Spock still exists in the world. So, like, because, you know, there are people always writing Star Trek books and stuff, so I'm just saying, if for those who are trying to, you know, who hold to the continuities and whatnot, and hold to canon, it's like, in canon, there would still be reason for Spock to exist in the actual timeline, so if you write a story with Spock in it, it would still fit official canon.
But the problem with that, Marcus, like Jim said, all the novel stuff is still continuing right now. Spock in actual canon is that one. The novel stuff isn't actually canon anyway, so they're never going to run into that issue because in their universe, Spock probably never went back.
Fair enough. I don't know, I just thought it was kind of interesting that, hey, Spock could technically still exists.
He could, but he's a clone on a planet with a dude. He's probably dead.
You doubt it, it's Spock. He would find a way not to die.
It's Spock, which means he would also probably think about, logically, there shouldn't be 2 of me in the universe.
Even if he did, and even if he was raised that way, logic would dictate that death is inevitable for all beings at some point or another, and therefore trying to prolong his life, artificially in a state that would not necessarily permit him to live it to the fullest would be illogical, and therefore he would allow himself to die.
Oh, no, I'm not saying he would try to keep himself from dying naturally. I'm just saying, through natural aging and stuff, he'd still be alive because Spock Prime would still be alive. He'd be the same age as Spock Prime because they're the same person.
But would Spock Prime still be alive? And I don't mean that. I mean, would he still be alive in that universe from that point on? Because didn't he need help with stuff like some of his emotional stuff and all that in the later films anyway? And also when he reappeared in like Next Gen and stuff, which means the other one wouldn't have had the help to get that stuff.
True. He would be a different Spock, but I think he'd still be there. He'd probably be a different character. He'd still be Spock, but like you said, he wouldn't have had the same stuff as Spock Prime. But I feel he'd still be alive. Not through artificial prolonging his life or anything, just by virtue of, regardless of what he went through, he's still Spock. So I feel he'd still be alive. I don't know, it's just this animated series being canon just brings other possibilities. I'm just like, I hadn't thought about that. That's kind of cool.
No, it's like fair enough. But yeah, like I said, the animated series as a whole. I mentioned what my favorite episode was. I don't know about you guys.
I like that yesteryear, the Spock episode. That was my favorite episode.
And cool. How about you, Jim?
Let's see. Favorite episode of the animated series. Let's see, I'm trying to think. Which one of those was the best one?
Not necessarily the best, but your favorite.
Yeah, I'm trying to think which one. I'm trying to think of which one I enjoyed the most. Let's see. Which ones were good? I liked the one with Harry Mudd and the Tribbles. That was fun. I liked the one where they all got shrunk down real tiny. That was kind of cool. I had to overcome that, and it turned out that that wasn't a problem to begin with.
We're not asking which ones you liked, because I liked them all.
Well, excuse me, princess. Killing me. Let's listed a couple of my favorites. Yeesh.
But regardless, there's loads of good episodes.
I don't think there's a bad episode in the bunch, personally.
And how would you guys rate the series? You go first, Jim.
If I were gonna rate this series, I'd give it an 8.5 to a 9. It's a pretty good series, aside from some I had some issues with the voice acting, which I understand they had to pay the actual actors, so that's where their budget went. But aside from some coloration issues, and even those were kind of normal because it's a bright, colorful cartoon. It's fun to see pink tribbles and shit. But that and the the voice acting, it was a good, solid series. The episodes were a lot of fun. They felt like legitimate Star Trek episodes. And after with the first couple, I started to really get into it and start to understand why people were such fans of the Kirk era, not having seen the actual live action Kirk era, which again I need to watch. But I gotta understand why people were so fond of that, why it does hold such a special place aside from being the first series. It really did have a good formula, and the characters really were enjoyable and lovable. And I really liked getting to be involved in at least part of that so far, and that's just further inspired me to go back and watch the actual Kirk era series.
And cool. And how about you, Marcus?
I thought this was a really good series. I really loved how they expanded upon and extended the relationship between the main three, between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and you really saw the evolution of their friendship and relationship, in this series. On the whole, I would probably say, if you're a Star Trek fan, especially if you're a fan of the original series, I would say definitely watch this. Maybe even go so far as to buy it. If I would say go watch it on, if you have Hulu, watch it on Hulu Plus. That's where I watched it, on Hulu. Watch it maybe somewhere digitally first, and then if you like it, definitely go buy it because it's worth it.
Yeah.
If you're a Star Trek fan in general, it's probably fun to see. But I would say, as a series, like I said, to me it was too short. It was very abrupt. It didn't feel like a complete series to me. So I would probably rate it middle of the road in terms of
Can you
series.
get closer?
Sorry. Yeah, I was saying, to me, the series was, again, too short. It didn't feel like a complete series to me. You know, that coupled with some of the things that Jim mentioned of issues, I'd probably rate it middle of the road. Its writing was definitely its strongest point. But even that doesn't put it on a high list in terms of series in general for me, just because of everything else that was wrong with it. As good as it is, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's terrible. So I would probably rate it in the middle, but definite watch or even buy if you're a Star Trek fan.
Stop stealing Mole's rating scale.
And fair enough.
Oh,
And
also, I do need one thing I will give. You made the point earlier about it not really having a finale. Yes and no, because we got to round out by seeing Robert April captain the Enterprise. That was awesome.
That was awesome. I will grant you that.
Yep. Which, yeah, I'd give this a firm buy because it's cheap as fuck. Why would you? If you call yourself a Star Trek fan, how can you call yourself a Star Trek fan and then watch it on Netflix or Hulu or something and not just buy it? It's cheap as fuck. It costs less to buy this than it does to buy a magazine nowadays. That's kind of shocking. Which means, yeah, I'd give this a firm buy. It's pretty good across the board, like the writing and stuff. The voice acting of the main characters is great.
Yep.
In terms of the Star Trek series, it's fucking miles above Voyager or Enterprise. So it's definitely worth checking out. So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'd say buy.
I agree.
Available on Amazon right now.
Indeed.
But I was your host to this one, Chriz, aka the Mole. This was my contribution to Year of Track as my own video, and thank you for joining me, Marcus Shadow.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And James Phoenix.
You're welcome, and thank you.
And yeah, see ya.